Hey, everybody. It's exactly almost 2 p.m. Nice to be with you as we do the Trump Tyranny Tracker live with Olga Lautman from the Trump Tyranny Tracker and Zev Shalev here from Narrative. It's day 141 as we're tracking the authoritarian creep of the Trump administration. There's so much to cover. We were just saying before we got in the air, there's just so much news and so few hours in the day to cover it all.
Really, I mean, I don't understand how do we get more hours to deal with this? I mean, it's just an onslaught of information, actions, and I mean, it's
Yeah.
about focusing, I guess, focusing on the actual tactics that, are extremely dangerous.
Well, you've always taught me that it's always about flooding the zone is what they're trying to do, just to distract us and to overwhelm us. So, being aware of that is very useful. We just want to welcome everybody who's joining us: Mary Pearson, Bobby Porter, Georgine, A. Hofferkamp. Nice. Thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate your support every day on the Trump Tyranny Tracker. Also, tonight at 8 p.m., we'll be doing the first official seminar in our Authoritarianism 101, which is going to be all about creating the narrative and about creating the enemies, I guess, in both situations. This is critical for what authoritarians do.
Absolutely. Authoritarians all use the same tactics. I mean, I know the tactics used in Russia, Belarus, and other dictatorships in Eastern Europe, but specifically understanding the tactics that they use and then having ways that we can push back is extremely important because there is a way to push back. And that's why this 8-week session is, I think, crucial for understanding what is happening, recognizing what is happening, and also having the tools to fight back. And luckily, I always say fortunately and unfortunately, Americans, never had to deal with dictatorships. So, this might be new for a lot of people who, just simply had the fortune, never to have to deal with something like this in this country.
So it's at 8 o'clock tonight. People can still register if they want to before we get there. It's for paid subscribers of both the Trump Tyranny Tracker and Unmasking Russia and narrative.org. But if you're a paid subscriber to any of those, and we both have really good deals on right now, you can join us in this Google Meet seminar, which is 8 weeks long. Be incredibly valuable if anyone's concerned about what's going on right now in America and the authoritarian creep. This will give you everything you need to understand what's happening and the tools and also the messaging around how to deal with all of that. So you can sign up at either at any of our blogs at Trump Tyranny Tracker or at narrative.org. We both have our sign up sheets there, and then you have to register to get in. It's not going to be one of these Substack things. So please do
And
that.
registration cutoff is at 7. We did a preliminary one last weekend. People were registering at literally like 8:01. By 7:30, I will send everyone the link to the Google Meet so they can join the session.
Someone is asking, Cat M is asking, do you have to register for each Tuesday individually?
At this moment, I think so. But I will work on figuring out how to, if there's a better way to streamline and maybe put multiple sessions and then just have people check off which session they're going. But as of now, it's for each session.
A lot of people have signed up already. So people, if you want to join soon, because there's going to be a point where it becomes too many for us to handle. So, if you're going to register today and early today. Let's move into the big story before 7. So Olga doesn't freak out before the show before
Last
this
week
seminar.
we started the Google Meet and like literally I felt so bad because the first 5 minutes I'm still sending out a link for the last minute
No one noticed. You're such
people
a pro. No one noticed. It was okay. But now you've told everyone. So, but everyone will be there, and we'll be there on time, and it'll be a great
Hi Kevin.
digest.
Lucky
Um,
you in London.
yeah, people in London. There's also people in LA, which is really great to have people in LA, especially because we're always looking for the real, on the ground perspective. And this is where we're starting the show today. Multiple journalists covering immigration protests in Los Angeles have come under direct attack from law enforcement just in the last few hours. Australian journalist Lauren Tomasi was shot with a rubber bullet live on air while covering the protests, with footage clearly showing police aiming directly at her and her cameraman, despite visible press markings. CNN correspondent Jason Carroll was detained live on television by LAPD officers after clearly identifying himself as the press, and officers warned him not to return or face arrest, potentially violating California laws protecting journalists at protest scenes. Two CNN camera operators were subsequently arrested, their status still unknown. Well, this is very clear authoritarianism tactics, all about suppressing the media.
And a British journalist
Mm.
also was injured and had to undergo surgery. So, look, I've covered a lot of protests over the decades and documented them, whether Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, you name it. And the fact that the U.S. is becoming so dangerous for journalists to operate. And I watched the video with the Australian journalist. I mean, literally
Terrifying.
the police officer looked at her as she's reporting. She wasn't even in a crowd. Like you saw, there was really nothing around her, and he shot straight at her. And the fact that we have, journalists, and this is, I mean, a humiliation for America to have international journalists, being shot on air, and with the Australian, I believe Prime Minister basically summoning the US, his US counterparts to discuss what is happening. This is extremely dangerous. And when you see these type of, blatant attacks on the press, who it is their obligation to be there and to cover what is happening and to tell the story to the world. I mean, this is their job, and it's extremely necessary in a democracy to have journalists who can safely report from, wherever they're dispatched without being shot or detained or arrested.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variation between being shot and being detained are two different things. Sure, journalists can sometimes be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe there's reason to detain them briefly because they're in the line of fire or something like that, and they could be doing dangerous things. But shooting at a journalist doing her job is outrageous. I mean, this is not. I mean, we all know when you become a journalist, you're taking your life in your own hands, and you don't have any of the weapons or any of the normal protection that you would have if you were up against these armed policemen and these riot gear. And this woman who's doing her job as a civilian reporter and is being shot at from behind by a police officer in LA. Well, this is a First Amendment country. This is a country which protects the freedom of the press, and it's just abysmal that the police are doing it in such a violent way. I mean, sure, they could have, there's other ways of dealing with the media who are not maybe following the rules, or but to shoot at media, to shoot at the media, what is this? Who's really provoking all the violence on the streets? It's the authorities, it's the police. It's not the undocumented immigrants. It's not the protesters. It's not the journalists. It's the police doing it.
Yeah, and look, I remember covering the George Floyd protest, and we had the same incidents.
Mhm.
I mean, look, this is freaking America. Like, people are supposed to feel safe to report here. And you have, I mean, on top of these incidents that were caught on camera, and I'm sorry, even detaining, I mean, he was reporting on air live with Laura Coates when he is saying, I am being detained. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't see him reporting on air,
And Jason
and
Carr is a very well-known guy. He's been around for a very long time. He certainly reported out of New York and LA. He's a very good journalist. This is not the kind of person that people wouldn't recognize as being a CNN journalist.
really, he has very clear markings,
Hmm.
CNN. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think journalists, they go to the field with extremely clear markings of who they work for, on top of having, press jackets and whatnot. And look, if this was an isolated incident or a set of incidents, it's one thing. But we've had various, journalist watchdogs over the past few months warning that the United States is now not a safe place to be a journalist or to report
Mhm.
or to work in. And I mean, so this goes to the bigger thing, that basically mimics, like I said, I've covered these protests forever. I mean, this is what happens in banana republics,
Mhm.
and this is exactly where Trump is taking us.
Especially when you're allowing violence against the media, that's a whole other level.
He loves it.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Let's move to the other story related to what's going on in LA. ICE is deputizing local police departments in record numbers under Trump's revived 287G program. It effectively allows local cops to become immigration agents. Over 500 new agreements have been signed since January, expanding into states like Tennessee and Florida. Despite past scandals involving racial profiling and abuse at these departments, this represents a large expansion of federal immigration enforcement power into local policing in America. They want to remove 10 million Americans from America. So this is how they're going to do it, through like, sort of subcontracting it to these local sheriffs.
And the bigger worry, and this is what, I have been warning about, and I have to go to rooftops to keep screaming about this. Immigrants are the shiny object. What they really are doing is
Mhm.
building a police state. And by deputizing, all these local officials and mercenary groups and everything that we've been discussing over the past few months since we started this live. They are building a police state, and right now, immigrants are the test case. But this is meant for us.
Mhm.
I mean, and we see very clearly the fact that there are 700 Marines going to what? What are they going to do? I mean, again, I asked this yesterday. I will ask this again today. What is a battalion of Marines going to do in the streets of LA? Like, we're not in Iraq. We're not in Afghanistan. We're
We're
not
not even seeing
in.
the violence that they're talking, need any of this. It's the streets are relatively peaceful so far. So, like, what's the reason to have Marines there at all? And we know Marines can be in different environments can be very dangerous. I mean, they're used to war zones. We know what some Marines
It's
can
the
do.
most lethal force
Hmm.
on the planet.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no reason to have any military, and there is a reason that we have had these separations where U.S. military is not allowed to conduct, local law enforcement. And yes, so you turn on the media and see all this, protest porn, but this is isolated to a few blocks. It's not all of LA. I mean, this is like where you see the cars burning and, these protesters going back and forth with police. This is not happening across all of LA. This is
No. No.
happening within a few blocks. There are
You know,
pockets of these.
maybe we should spend a few seconds here or minutes just talking about the disinformation that's going on, because it is just important. It doesn't relate to yesterday's tracker necessarily, but what's going on is a lot of disinformation. This is a created in news narrative, and we'll talk about this probably later on today as well, where they're trying to tell you that there's something going on in the streets of LA that looks much worse than it is. They're trying to say that the entire city's in chaos. It's not in chaos. Maybe small sections are, protesters, but it's not in
Pockets.
chaos. Yeah. But then there's also on top of that, there's now these viral hoaxes that are being released. There's an image going around of a pallet of bricks that people are saying online that it was left for rioters. Now, that is not. That is basically, it comes from a Malaysian construction supplier, actually, the original photograph. But, it just shows you how that kind of viral image can suddenly spread so quickly, and everyone believes that, there's bricks being left around for the protesters to throw at windows, or, this is just not the case. It's not that this the amount of awareness everyone needs to have right now in terms of what's disinformation, it needs to be very high, because this is really a narrative being spun right in front of your eyes.
Yeah, there are two things with the information space that you're seeing. One, you're seeing the disinformation. And again, this is identical to what happened during the George Floyd protest, where you had, pockets of protest amplified, which ended up being white supremacist agitators
Mhm.
later on that we found who were charged for setting fires and whatnot. You had the pallet of bricks. I mean, every time I see a pallet of bricks, I laugh. And every time there's a protest, I'm like, where's the photo of the pallet of bricks? Because you had the same videos of these bricks appearing, during George Floyd protest. So you have all the disinformation. I can tell you the Russians right now, and it's not just the Russians. I'm sure I focus on Russia, but I'm sure the Iranians and Chinese and every other, adversary or maybe ally of ours these days, Trump's allies, um, they are working disinformation space to put out disinformation. Yesterday, I gave an example. During the George Floyd protest, the Russians, put out, a video of a police officer being set on fire. This happened years prior in Mexico. Had nothing to do with U.S. protest. But as the Russians and, Chinese and Iranians work, they are trying to spread as much chaos and fear and confusion here. And you can imagine if you're an NYPD cop standing, dealing with your protest in New York City, and you see a viral image of a cop being set on fire in Portland. So, I mean, so you have this part of the information space right now that they're carrying out and injecting all this disinformation and whatnot. Then the other one, which I'm going to write about today, is the information, priming the information space. This is such a classic tactic of what Russia does, the Soviets did, where when they're preparing for something, they prime the people for it. And here you have literally everyone from the propagandist to the Trump, White House people, to all the agencies using specific wording, insurrection.
Mhm.
There is no insurrection. There's nothing there in LA to overthrow any government. I mean, an insurrection is what we saw on January 6th
Yeah.
when they tried to, stop the official proceedings of certifying a duly elected president. And then they brought nooses and hunted down lawmakers to assassinate them.
Mhm.
That was an insurrection. Here, pockets of violence is for local law
Yeah. It's the
enforcement, but they're using specific language
Mhm.
to prime people, insurrection,
Rebellion is
rebellion.
yeah.
Nothing happening like that.
No, they use it in order to, to create the fear. They create the fear that this is what's happening. And that fear is exactly what they're trying to motivate. There's also, by the way, images from movies of military being deployed in LA. These are from movies. It's not real life, but people are going to start
No.
mistaking it. And then you've got people like, Speaker Johnson talking about tarring and feathering Newsom. I mean, this is the kind of this is the hyping up of violence, the hyping up of violent rhetoric, and the hyping up of a crisis or a chaos that isn't really happening.
And Don Jr. and a whole slew of these propagandists who are saying, shoot the protesters. We
Yeah,
have a justice system.
from
If
this
they did,
ruse. It's like,
yeah, if they set a car on fire, then they get arrested and go through the justice system. We do not have a system like in Russia where you disappear people. Well, at least we're not supposed to,
yeah.
or shoot people, and that's it. I mean, there are the reason we have a set of laws in this country. So, I mean, this is something we need to be and push back against. It's extremely important to push back against this and to correct the
And,
narrative.
and Jenny Benjamin, who's one of our viewers, lives in LA. Someone else earlier who lived also in California, I just don't remember exactly where. Also saying there was ICE raids, but no violence at all. Like there's nothing going on. There's no insurrection going on. So people have to just keep their attention focused on people that they trust and double check everything, double fact check everything before you share it, because it's so important that this information doesn't get inflamed. And also, you're going to hear a lot of stuff from the right wing agitators that you just have to discount.
And
the
so this asks, how do you push back? By putting the information, correcting the narrative, whether it's community notes, whether it's going into their tweets. I'm telling you, I've become like a Russian troll. I literally have gone into every single agency and, officials' tweets when they use the word insurrection and put pictures of the real insurrection that happened. So this is how you push back by that. And the last thing I'll say on this is that the Russians are excellent, and unfortunately, the MAGA and these far right supremacists and extremists have copied these tactics, or maybe Russia trained them directly. Where there could be a peaceful protest, a million people are out. What the Russians will do is find, the one fight and then how you call it, put it out into the information space as if this is the whole protest,
yeah.
to make it look violent, to create an alternative narrative and to reshape reality. And this
It's
is
kind of
what we're watching here.
I can't believe the president of the United States is basically inciting chaos through these narratives, and
Absolutely.
and narratives are interesting. We'll talk. We don't get into this too much yet, but if you get them early, if someone is telling you if someone is pushing a lie or pushing a false video out, if you get to them early and correct it early, you have much better chance of succeeding at limiting that narrative spread than if you get it later. So if you're at home, you're also doing your part, just policing what Olga's doing. She's saying she's doing, which is like correcting the narrative as it's happening. So important that people do that. Now, multiple Democratic members of Congress were denied entry to federal detention centers in LA and New York over the weekend as they attempted to inspect conditions following mass immigration raids and arrests of protesters. Lawmakers report being met with chemical irritants and locked gates when trying to conduct congressional oversight. Some lawmakers accuse DHS of obstructing constitutionally mandated oversight functions.
Here we are again. Who is you have this regime who is basically arresting lawmakers, you know, preventing them from doing their oversight. Um, Sorry, my
No worries.
phone. Um, you have them preventing. This is their duty. They're allowed to go unannounced to any ICE facility and, you know, request to carry out their oversight duties.
Mm.
You have this regime who does not believe in the power of Congress, things that Congress should be just a rubber stamp as, they carry out their unlawful acts. And here we are again, these lawmakers are lucky they didn't get arrested like the other lawmaker who attempted to do this, in New Jersey, and the mayor who got arrested in New Jersey. And this is something, again, we need to push back against, is because our lawmakers, have rights and they have
Duties,
responsibilities.
yeah. It's
And
their
that's it.
job, at the end of the day, their job, this is the checks and balances of in our system. If you don't have the press doing the reporting, you don't have the congressional oversight that's required by the Constitution, you'll end up with a dictatorship. You'll end up with authoritarianism because no one's checking any of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, and this is the other thing Trump is doing. It's the last story from the tracker today. Trump has declared at least 8 national emergencies since returning to office in January. He's using them to bypass laws, override opposition, and justify extreme actions, including sending the National Guard to LA against the state's wishes. Legal experts say many of these emergencies appear manufactured to consolidate power and incite fear rather than address genuine crises. It seems, we've been saying that all along, but this is 8 emergencies. It's, he beats any other president. I think even Obama used a lot of these things, but not this much.
I don't even remember anyone
Uh,
finding obscure laws, you know, century-old laws, and declaring national emergencies to basically, for a power grab. I don't remember any president, really being this bold. But I mean, this is again something we've been documenting. You create, manufacture an emergency, and the article that I'm linking it to, legal experts say some. I will go ahead and correct them and say all of these are manufactured
yeah,
emergencies.
yeah,
There is no economic emergency. There is no immigration
yeah.
emergency.
There's no
There,
Venezuelan invasion.
there's no invasion
Yeah.
from Venezuela. I mean, every single emergency he is manufacturing,
Mhm.
there is no emergency. And the point is to consolidate power and, to basically erase the checks and balances. And this is what a dictator does. I mean, honestly, like I keep repeating in Russia, I mean, Putin operates on emergency. He got into office from blowing up apartment buildings
Mhm.
and creating a terrorist attack. And then, unleashing a set of emergencies then for the second Chechen war and to start, consolidating power. And I can't tell you how many times over the past decades he's used emergencies, including these, creating then laws like the Foreign Agents Law,
Mhm.
where anyone who, disagrees or even questions anything, is deemed a foreign agent and basically a threat to the people. And I mean, this goes back to Soviet days. Putin, didn't invent anything. He's using, Soviet tactics. But I mean, this is extremely dangerous because, there is a reason we have Congress and we have, the judiciary, because if there is an actual national emergency, all three branches are
Mhm.
supposed to, come together, make sure that everything is, legally sound. Congress is supposed to approve the president's powers. And here, unfortunately, he has hijacked, Congress. We don't have a Congress at this
Mhm.
moment. And the judiciary, I mean, they're, terrified, frankly, for their lives and trying to keep up and push back as much as they can. But I mean, this is a dictator.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, this is not when are we going to hit authoritarian, become an authoritarian state. We are one right now.
Yeah, and that's even CNN, I think, said it in one of their pieces today that Trump is acting like an authoritarian. But as you point out, we are in an authoritarian state already. It certainly looks like that slippery slope is quite steep right now. That is the tracker for today. I think. Is there anything else you wanted to throw in before we leave for today?
The only warning, and this is something I'm monitoring, it was in yesterday's tracker. There is a neo-Nazi group, and we've covered it before, the base, and they have become
Yeah.
extremely emboldened. The reason I want to throw it in with this, they're opening now paramilitary camps. A lot of their leaders trained in paramilitary camps in St. Petersburg. They're connected to the German neo-Nazi, chapter, and my worry is that with everything happening, that you can have Russia use these neo-Nazi groups to set off terrorist attacks, and to carry out operations on U.S. soil to inflame things further. So that's the
Absolutely.
only thing, I'm monitoring them at the moment and, keeping track. We spoke about them a few months ago because they actually were organizing terrorist attacks in Ukraine, including assassinations. But now they've refocused back to the U.S. on top of their operations for Ukraine. So it's something to monitor because I worry a lot that Russia will take this opportunity and set off attacks in U.S. in order to further throw us into chaos.
I have a story on narrative.org today about Errol Musk, Elon's father, who was in Moscow for 48 hours. And, he was sitting there alongside Malofiev and Lavrov. And, I was reminded by the role that Malofiev has played in orchestrating these Orthodox Church, white nationalist kind of movements around the world for Putin, obviously for the Kremlin. But Malofiev is that oligarch who's done all that, and there's Elon Musk's father is sitting right next to him, apologizing for basically what Elon Musk did over the last few days, saying what a mistake it was. And the whole image is worthy of another show, but I just, people should check out the article and just
Yeah.
understand how intertwined the Trump administration, MAGA, Russia, Orthodox Church, the base, all these white nationalist movements, how intertwined all that is. It's really one system.
And with Malofeyev, we should do a separate show about him. I actually spent almost 2 years mapping out the SVR ring because he operates under SVR, which is Russia's Special Intelligence Services, and mapping out the SVR ring in Europe, working with journalists who then, did stories and exposed
I'd love to
these
see that.
people. Um, and also in the US, Malofeyev works under SVR. He was instrumental in Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea using the, Orthodox Church and mercenaries. He worked very close. They work with both the mercenary groups, at the time, Prigozhin's and a few other mercenary groups, and also with the biker gangs, where they, ran destabilizing operations in Poland and Serbia, and others. So, I mean, we really should do a show on him
Yeah,
because
good idea.
he's key. And the last thing I'll say, he sent an operative into the United States and was funding an outlet of his.
Oh yeah, this is a
In
story. I did the story a lot. That in Massachusetts, I think, or was it in Pennsylvania? It was in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania
Yeah.
with Charles Bowdsman,
Yes.
and he initially was sent here for specifically on Crimea, and to put disinformation on Crimea and Syria. Eventually repurposed for U.S. 2016 election. Ended up 2020, organizing an insurrection in Pennsylvania and attending the one in D.C. and then fled back to Russia.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
Malofeyev is a very, very dangerous character, including the guy he works under, this guy, Leonid Reshetnikov, who used to be high-level
Yeah.
SVR, and he's the one who runs these operations.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about Malofeyev forever, so I'm not going to. I was going to just add the
Yeah.
Bosman was basically, this is like the father of this renewed white nationalist movement. That's racist white nationalist movement. He held meetings at his barn with all these white nationalist groups. It was really he fostered this whole environment. So that's all part of Malofeyev's
Russia
things.
and the Nazis.
We have a lot to talk about on this guy, apparently. That is the Trump Tyranny Tracker for today. We'll be back at 8 o'clock tonight with our first session of the Authoritarianism 101 course. And I'll be back in just about 30 minutes from now with Dean
29.
Blundell, and we'll be doing the 5 stacks. So I hope everyone will join us for that. And we'll see you tonight, Olga. Thanks
See
very
you
much.
later.
Thanks very much for being here today,
Have a
everybody.
good
We'll see you
show.
later. Bye-bye.
Bye.